what to take from this is that she did this work. She had this unpublished data, and Franklin had no idea that Watson and Crick had seen her unpublished data.
Drama.
So now there was a photo 51 which was shown to Watson by Maurice Wilkins, who was someone that was working with Rosalind Franklin on the sort of looking for the structure of DNA. Now this photo 51 was basically an image of a DNA molecule. And that was apparently the inspiration for Watson to like sort of build the model of DNA as being the double helix, because apparently in photo 51, this photo of the structure of this photo of a DNA molecule, the helix was present. Like the double helix was like visible, essentially.
Blimey.
Yeah, like the pattern, it says here the pattern was clearly a helix. So
someone called Drama Alert.
Well, no, that's what I kind of wanted to talk about. Kind of the issues of, I mean, I guess this kind of falls into the issue of how we view science and scientists. Like, this would not have happened if there was a sort of more collaborative atmosphere, right? If we didn't take scientists and say, you made this discovery, you are amazing. Because, I mean, realistically, if they had taken her data, all they needed to have done is said, clearly, this data is this person's. Yeah. This is where we got this. And then she would have gotten she probably would have gotten the Nobel Prize as well, along with them, because she had contributed so much to their work. So I think it's important to consider, like, I guess really how we view science, which is we view it as just individual people doing great things, but that's really not the case at all. And having that view can actually have an impact on how scientists do their work, because they feel they just stole from her.
Yeah.
They feel they stole from her because they wanted the glory, presumably, like, or they didn't see her as, worthy of getting the praise. Like, it's really, really weird to me. It's really frustrating that that's how we view sort of the whole sort of mess of science, of individuals doing great things,
I feel like, should there not be a little bit higher standard for the Nobel Prize Committee if they realise they've awarded a Nobel Prize to somebody who ultimately did not declare their sources in science, which is like one of the most important places to declare your sources.
There you go.
Could you not have something that sort of retroactively applies? Like, I feel like if you are up for a Nobel Prize, it's like when I sign a contract, right? If I sign a contract for writing something, or I've had to sign contracts for releasing my film, there's a clause in there that says, I declare that this is my own work. And what that does is it protects the company I'm signing to. If it turns out to not be my work, they can be sued, but they can then sue me. And I feel like if Nobel Prize guys come along and like, hey man, we're going to give you a Nobel Prize for your great work. Did you do it all?
Yeah.
and you should be asked that question, and you should say yes. And if you don't say, if you say yes and it turns out that that's not true, you should maybe have like some of your money. I mean, they can't take it back. It's not how it would work. But like some mechanism,
or at least add her into,
add her onto the Nobel Prize so she gets a Nobel Prize.
Well, she was a woman.
That's not a hard thing.
She was a woman.
And excludes her.
Yeah.
Sorry, I forgot.
She was a woman. No, I mean, seriously though, like that probably did contribute to it quite a lot.
I don't disagree. I'm almost certain. But like now we're a lot further along. We're in 2022, and stuff's looking up. It's getting better, and I would hope that the Nobel Prize Committee now have something in there that goes, if you say this is all your own work and you don't declare your sources, not that obviously there are other people who make things and you didn't necessarily know about it, but if it's like, you saw this stuff, because one of the easiest ways to make money in film, by the way, I'm not going to do this, but one of the easiest ways to make money in film is to write a load of treatments for a load of films, right? Crucially, you then protect them, and then you send them out to every production company you can possibly imagine.
Yeah, because then as soon as they make something that's remotely similar, you just go ahead and
you have like you registered it with the Writers Guild, and you have an email showing that you sent it to them, and you sue them. And the thing about that is you'll win. Like, you just will win. Now, obviously, if they can prove that they were developing it way before, then you won't. But if they can't, then it's very likely you'll win. And that's obviously not the case if you if you can prove that they had access or they saw that thing, you can maybe make the case that, well, maybe it went in subconsciously, or maybe they forgot that they'd seen it and that's where the idea came from, that kind of thing. But even in that case, if you can form a clear link, Well, then add her to the Nobel Prize. It's not a particularly big deal. She's dead. They're dead as well now, I think, are they?
Yeah, both of them are dead.
So, like, whatever. No one cares. Just add it to the thing
They're
to
not
go,
going to be offended, are they?
look at this woman who did some really brilliant work and was forgotten and potentially, probably, had her work stolen by two men who were then given £1 million. Give her a flipping credit.
Yeah. She actually did work that contributed to 2 separate Nobel Prizes. So it's unbelievable to me that happened in such recent history, you know? And people have wanted us to talk about this for a while. And it's just baffling to me. Baffling that there's no protocol for that. Like you're saying, that there's just nothing.
Yeah.
You know, she doesn't get anything really. And that sucks. That really sucks. Especially, I mean, I think this could just be solved by having a more collaborative view of science and having it be less a case of this individual has done this. Like, scientists are really good at working with each other. Generally, they can be quite good at working with each other. But when companies kind of get involved, when it comes to that, it becomes very difficult, right? And when money gets involved, it becomes difficult. Like we were like people that were trying to build sort of, I think it was models to understand how COVID would spread or something along those lines. Something, you know, that would help in the fight against COVID. And not a single one of them. Oh, that was it. It was the models to diagnose COVID, right? Or to figure out who could potentially have it before testing. You know, those AI, those sort of AI models that they built. None of them worked. None of them were good enough. And so many of them were really, really similar, just like kind of slightly different from each other, that every single, like pretty much, if all of the sort of labs that had been working on it had come together, they could have done something better than they did individually, right? Yeah. And that's so strange to me that we want so much competition, you know? We always want to be the best.
Now, I feel like we're slowly moving towards the C word, Corey.
No, not at all.
And it's not competition.
Well, you got two options, I guess. Like what that feels like to me is that one thing that the music industry has done really well is it's been able to formalize structures for collaboration, which actually makes collaboration a lot better and a lot safer, which means that musicians can go, it's not perfect, but it's better than, say, the film industry, it's better than photography, it's better than a lot of creative industries. And it means that, at least in this country, and I think in the US and maybe in other countries, essentially, if you go and do some work on a track with someone, you might not get paid at all. You might just collaborate with your friends, but you just write down who's contributed to something. And then if that thing blows up, automatically the royalties sort of are distributed. Now, it's not entirely automatically, but it's much more automatically than, say, in the film industry or in many other industries. And it feels like almost you need some kind of, you know how you cite papers in other papers and that kind of thing. If you had this sort of formalized web of connections between different papers, different citations, all these kind of things, when someone eventually wins the Nobel Prize or wins some massive thing, you could have this system. Like, okay, so say in the example of DNA, it's not Francis or Crick and Watson who won the Nobel Prize. It was the discovery won the Nobel Prize, and then that money or that credit or all that kind of like financial award can be trickled down to all these different places automatically. In some way, right? And it's about forming these sort of these webs of attribution that happen automatically, so that becomes an industry standard. And then it's any company. You can still have a certain amount of competition. You can have companies going against each other and fighting against each other in creative competition, kind of capitalist way. But then, if something succeeds and it built upon previous things, then the proceeds just like trickle down, and are distributed automatically. You don't have to go like, oh, I'm going to be a good guy and give some money here. If you're citing something, and then crucially, what's even more crucial to that is that if there was a link that wasn't declared. Like in this case, possibly there was a link that wasn't declared. The system or like people within that system can form that link, almost like a neuron connecting, and then those proceeds are redistributed according to that. That feels like something that could well be built.
Oh, definitely. Definitely possible because papers are published online and constantly, right? You have the references all there.
Yeah.
And you can click the link of a reference and go back through paper and paper and paper. Like it's all definitely possible. It's all been digitized. It is totally possible to do that. I just think there is zero incentive. Do you know what I mean? No, I agree with you.
Yeah.
I just don't think anyone would want to do that. Because
I think the individual scientists would want to, but it's just that
Potentially, yeah.
scientists are usually employed by institutions, and those institutions might not want to.
yeah, exactly.
Because obviously, that's what I mean about the music industry. The music industry has formalized that in with some institutions. They have sort of, to a certain extent, formalized it. So the individual, and the thing about musicians is they're generally not inside of larger companies. They're generally individual musicians, individual music, like players, writers, those kind of things. But yes, you're right that like your Pfizer's and your who else is there? Procter and Gamble and all those, they probably are not going to want to do that, because a large part of their business model probably relies on not giving attribution to where it's due.
Yeah.
I don't know. That might be...
Maybe. I don't...
Yeah.
Well, no, I think...
Or not giving financial credit. Like, they're any large business, or any business at all, really, sort of functions on keeping as much of the proceeds for itself as possible, as it can. And obviously you give royalties where you have to, but trying to keep as much for yourself as possible.
Yeah, what I find insane is that you could do work for one of these companies and you could discover something, and then the company owns it.
Yeah.
You could make a groundbreaking company owns it.
Yeah.
You could have put in the work for your entire life, but the company owns it because, and it's crazy because they've said, okay, we'll give you some money, right?
Yeah.
We'll let you survive, and we'll give you all of this stuff that you can't afford yourself. Now, if you do anything major, we're going to keep it. That's the trade-off that you get.
And that's the thing, is you eventually could reach a world in which, because essentially what you're doing there, if you work for less money, for the potential reward, you're becoming an investor, right? You're investing a portion of your time in a potential reward, and you are taking on more risk. And large companies take on large amounts of risk relative to their employees, who take on very little risk because they don't have anything else to do. They want to work for a company. They want to do science, and so that's what they want to do. And so the company takes on the risk. If people eventually were willing to take on more of their own risk, say, for example, for 2/3 of the salary, they take a pay cut, but then if there are proceeds from their work distributed through this system that's done automatically, then they get a higher upside.
I think the issue is that this sort of like, oh, we'll take the risk so you don't have to. It's not necessarily a fair sort of, it's not a fair trade there, because you could say, oh, well, you could take on more of the risk by taking a cut to your salary. But generally the reason that people will accept that, like, oh, I'll take a salary and then not own any of my work, is because they don't really have a choice. You know what I mean? In that you need to pay for your house and for food and all of that sort of stuff. So when it comes to a choice between getting money or getting no money, you have to choose money. You pretty much always have to choose money when you're given the option of money or no money.
Yeah, I think there are an awful lot of scientists who've earned enough that they could take on more risk themselves. What I mean is there's no mechanism there for them to even do it even if they wanted to.
But then you'd say take on more. This is the thing. I think that is absolutely the wrong way of viewing sort of science and scientific discoveries and all of it. This is I guess an issue I have when it comes to sort of like companies getting involved in that sort of stuff. They're just not super compatible. Do you know what I mean? When you talk about thinking about risk and profits, you could study something for your entire lifetime and not make a groundbreaking discovery that makes a lot of money, right? Yeah. You could discover something. You could discover many things.
That's what I mean by risk. The company takes on the risk that you might do nothing of a groundbreaking level when they employ you. Do
nothing groundbreaking level in terms of profit.
Yeah,
but then
that's what I mean. I'm talking about risk purely financially.
Sure, yeah, but this is my point, that viewing science and scientific discovery and scientific achievement and all of that through the lens of profit and risk is just, I think it sidesteps like the actual point of making these discoveries, right? It says the ones that are the best, the ones that are the most important are the ones that will make the most amount of money, which I don't think is necessarily the case. Like, for example, specifically discovering the structure of DNA doesn't lead you to a lot of money necessarily. But it does make you then able to understand DNA to the point of, now we could splice genes, now we could work with DNA, now we can make genetically modified, or like all of that sort of stuff, sure. But that discovery in and of itself is not like a moneymaker. You know what I mean?
It would be a moneymaker if you were to have this sort of web of attribution where if anybody used your process in some way, essentially like a patent, if anybody used your process for anything, a small amount of credit, and then they made money off of that. So like if somebody discovers the PCR method and then loads of people sell PCR tests, a tiny amount of attribution goes through that sort of web and back to you or the company that discovered it. So I think when you're talking about like, so for example, one of the things we talk about a lot in the sort of pharmaceutical method of sort of organizing resources for science is like, okay, if a company discovers a cure to something that it sells a subscription service to, as happened with the stomach ulcers story we talked about in which episode, Jen?
Episode 1.
No.
Episode 1. Great. Yeah. That was an easy one. If you have a very good business model selling, for example, for an easy
treatment, not a cure.
Yeah,
specifically.
Yeah, a treatment. Say for ease, let's say paracetamol, right? Like it's especially in some countries where paracetamol or ibuprofen are still patented and so 10 times more expensive than we have it in the UK. You have the problem, which is pain. And you're selling essentially a subscription service to relieve pain, which is paracetamol or ibuprofen or whatever else, medical heroin, whatever. And then imagine, which you wouldn't do, you found a cure for pain, which you wouldn't do because otherwise you wouldn't have actually helpful pain like banging your knee or falling over or like you're getting electrocuted or whatever.
Knowing when something is wrong.
Knowing when something's wrong, right? You might not want that to be out there because it destroys your paracetamol business.
Yeah.
But the sort of solution to that is governmental awards for... the solution for that in an economic system, in a capitalist economic system, is creating financial awards for those who discover things that are generally benefiting humanity, even if they do not benefit a company. And so I feel there is a patch. There are ways to patch capitalism to fix the bad incentives that it creates sometimes.
You've hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. I brought up capitalism, damn it! I can't even do it.
Yeah, no, I specifically was not saying that. I was waiting for you to bring it up. So thank you for bringing it up.
He was leading you into it.
That was the C word, by the way.
So, now that I've walked you into that, yeah, you've hit the nail on the head there, Luke. Absolutely. Capitalism is just not... No, but my point is that capitalism isn't really compatible with the way that we kind of view science, right? Or how science sort of, I guess...
Ideal.
Should be.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you look at sort of knowledge through the lens solely of profit, then it becomes difficult because you can only if profit is your only incentive, well that's kind of not necessarily antithetical, but that's not compatible with the sort of incentive of science, which is knowledge and understanding and helping people potentially as well, right? When it comes to just like, oh, how can we make money? How can we make the most money? Yeah, you literally have companies that would want to silence and get rid of a cure for stomach ulcers because they're making bank selling the basically the Band-Aid treatment of antacids, you know? Like it's messed up. And you also then don't have enough research going into certain areas because hey, it might not make a profit. There's a risk there. But realistically, when it comes to science, if you're looking at, say, creating vaccines, if you're looking at, say, creating any kind of medicine, there is an incredible amount of risk because it might not be profitable because any avenue you go down could be a dead end. And
well, that does happen with capitalism. Companies do invest on possible things and then they lose their money.
Yeah.
And that's how companies are selected for or deselected for. But I guess it's almost like I wouldn't say that science is entirely incompatible with capitalism. It's just that it skews it towards certain types of science, and then you have to sort of have governmental agencies prop up the rest of the science.
When I say that it's incompatible, it's incompatible because you need a sort of not necessarily an outside force, but it's not something somewhat external
pure
to come
capitalism where governments don't exist and the free market is the only thing that exists and there are no rules.
Less regulated.
Exactly.
You specifically need to regulate capitalism because it's not compatible.
And I think that's the thing that people really don't understand is that we don't have capitalism because we have on top of it all these sort of patches, like I said, to capitalism, which is like regulations, like, okay, right, you're not actually allowed to do that. Oh, and by the way, you can only charge this amount maximum for this, which
you've got to pay people at least this at minimum.
We don't have it because there isn't such a thing as like a free labor market because you can't choose to not have money because you can't choose to not have food. So there's we don't have a truly free labor market when some of the things that capitalism produces are necessary for existence.
Yeah. And there's no way to specifically, the key here is that there's no way to access those things without engaging with capitalism.
Unless you have money already, yeah.
But then unless you've got capital, in which case...
Well, you could, yeah. Unless you you grow your own food on your own land that you already own. Yeah.
Like, if you want to look at the origins of capitalism, that could have been the case, and then capitalism made sure that was never going to be the case. Yeah.
So, but I always find that very interesting. Is that I think a lot of people think we have capitalism, whereas actually we have capitalism that we keep on adding fixes to. Because it doesn't actually work anywhere near perfectly. So anybody who claims to be a capitalist is like, oh, I'm a capitalist, but I'm not really, because, do you believe in the minimum wage? Oh, yeah, I believe in the minimum wage. Do you think governments regulate things? Oh, yeah, well, I think governments regulate things.
I've seen people that say that we should have completely unregulated capitalism. That's the way to go.
Yeah,
and I'm like, there's a reason that we have certain law. Like, people, we already have issues with minimum wage. Like, and if you look at the US, where waiters are paid below minimum wage, and what's the fix for that? People need to give them extra money so they
mandatory
don't starve.
tips.
Oh, so charity now.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. So that's not capitalism anymore. Well, it sort of is.
In a functional system, charity would not exist. Right?
In the sort of economic system, people giving tips to people who are underpaid is people being, oh man, the way you would describe that economically, it's hilarious. It's like those people are making, like, restaurant goers are making the free economic choice to give a tip in order to avoid the negative stimulus of guilt. That's how you would describe tipping.
But also, let's say people were just fine with guilt.
Yeah.
Because what is happening here is that companies would then be weaponizing guilt in order to increase their profits.
Yeah.
Or cut their spending and thereby increase their profits. Now, let's say that people all of a sudden were just like, okay, no guilt, I don't care.
They
would all immediately just collapse because the waiters would either try to find other jobs or realistically they wouldn't be able to find other jobs because it's not just as easy as finding another job. They would just die, and then who would come in to replace them? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, like it doesn't. Oh, it's baffling. It doesn't work. It's so annoying. But,
yeah. Who would come in to replace them would be people who are so desperate that they have to just take the wage,
and then they would die.
Yeah.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like, you don't have an unending labor force. At some point, the working class is going to die out if you're not paying them a livable wage.
Oh no.
Well, I'm just.
Or they're either going to die out or they'll revolt, and that's probably what they'll do. Is they'll revolt and then they'll kill you, and then you get a revolution, and then they set up a government. And then they go, oh, what was wrong last time? Oh, these things were wrong. Okay, let's make laws. And eventually you get back to not capitalism again. Yeah.
But capitalism is, I think it's fair to say that it's not really necessarily sustainable. So this is what bothers me about people that say, oh, I like capitalism. You kind of touched on it. Like, you've never seen capitalism in your life. Like, you don't know what that's like.
How capitalism do you want to go?
Yeah, exactly. You know, if we leave the free market to decide stuff, people die. That's pretty
capitalism with all the band-aids on it.
Yeah, it's like, oh gosh, this great boat that I've got, it's amazing. Oh, it sprung a leak there. Don't worry, I'll plug it up. Oh, there's another leak. Oh, I'll plug that one, and then the entire boat is just like corks that you've plugged the leaks up with, right? It's like, your boat is no longer there.
I love my boat.
I say we just plug all of the leaks in this capitalism boat until we've made it entirely out of socialism. Then we fixed it. We fixed the problem.
Oh, now I love capitalism.